There are times when you need to know better than to follow somebody. That you just say, aren't we blessed that Tanya Washington is on this earth? Isn't the law school blessed that Tanya Washington is on its faculty? Isn't this HBCU event blessed that Tanya Washington spoke to you today? And I get to brag that she's a Georgia State professor. I know this is an ecumenical occasion, but she's here. Why law school? I'm going to bring it down a few notches. There are the inspirational speakers, and then there are the nuts and bolts guys. How many of you are still weighing, is law school for you? Come on. How many of you know certain you want to go to law school? Okay. So you're not intimidated by the lingering effects of the recession, by the prospect of debt, and a shrinking job market. Good for you. Because let me tell you, those are facts, sort of, but they're not all the facts. All the facts tell you that this is the right time to buy. You're buying when the stock is down. Right now, the job market is showing an upward trajectory. It's not returning to the glory years. Technology, outsourcing, finding more efficient ways of practicing law have shrunk the market to some extent. Let's always make sure that when we talk about the market, we're talking about more than big law. That we're not just defining opportunity by referring to big law. But as a general proposition, the job market is improving. Not to the way it was, but it's improving. So why is this a good time to go to law school? We're graduating fewer students than we used to graduate. Because during the recession, applications were down. So there is a growing synchronicity between supply and demand today. There are more jobs, not as much as there were in the past, but there are fewer graduates. So there are jobs to go around for the first or second time since the recession hit. So I applaud your determination to go to law school without knowledge of that economic fact, but encourage you to redouble your commitment to do so by virtue of the fact that economically it is not as bleak as it was. It is also a very competitive market for law schools, but it's a more opportunity-oriented market for applicants. It's a good time to go, particularly if you're interested in practicing your passion. I'm just going to point out a few things that are my recommendation about how you should shop, how you should look. You know, when people start to write down things that I say, oh, you please do. Meaning, not meaning that they're words of wisdom, please feel free to. There's this joke. In undergraduate school, you walk into the classroom, the professor walks into the classroom, says good morning, the students say good morning. In law school, the professor walks in and says good morning, and the students write it down. Okay. Sample things that I think you should shop for. One, how committed is the law school to skills education? All law schools teach theory, understanding the values of the law or the bad values of the law or the doctrine of the law are all important. But we are not a grad school. We are part grad school, part professional school. if we are not committed to blending the theory with what it means to enter the profession, we are failing. And the legal community has been telling law schools that for over a decade. And it took a recession for law schools to stand up and go, I guess we got to do something. Now I'm going to brag and say the skills component of a legal education has been in Georgia State's DNA since its founding. But that doesn't mean that what we're doing today at Georgia State is what we did in 1982 when we opened our doors. I am not going to regale you here with all of what we do for experiential education. Many of the schools do. What I will say is, my personal view, there's nothing like going to an engaged law school in a vibrant urban environment. It is unmatched. Bucolic campuses can be beautiful. The lawns can be beautiful, but to have the Capitol, the courts, the law firms, the nonprofits, federal agencies, the state agencies, so long as the law school you pick in an urban environment makes that relevant to their education, and that the urban environment is not just an address. Dig deep about what they do with experiential education. It's not just how many clinics do they have. They all have enough clinics. Do they have an externship program that takes advantage of the environment? Do they have a faculty that's committed in regular classes, not just clinic classes? Do they have a faculty that's committed in the regular classes to integrate experiential education? So we're not just Professor Kingsfield like it's the 19th century. Been there, done that. You need a faculty pushing the limits and pushing the envelope for a modern day legal education. You need a law school committed to providing networking opportunities for the students. That could happen in a variety of venues. I'm sure the Dean of UDC could, I know they do an extraordinary amount there. It could be through your career services office, where they could provide networking programs. It could be through your student organizations. It could be through a lot of events, but it's another example of it ain't just the classroom. The classroom is the foundation. If they don't have the classroom goods, but in today's market and in today's world, networking, not waiting till after law school. We talked about this at a faculty presentation by one of our faculty members. Some law schools, we are one of them, are rethinking the primacy we need to give to the whole concept of professional identity formation and the way to get students to own it. Not just for us to throw it out at you, but to help you own your professional identity formation from the first day you walk in, and you're not trying to get in touch with your professional passions the day you pass the bar. Okay. Similar to networking, you want a community that's engaged. You want a school that says, I'd love to host the HBC Pre-Law Summit. You want to bring young professionals into the building. You want to bring the Southern Center for Human Rights, who was here 6 months ago doing a session on police brutality in today's world. Need I say more? Southern Center for Human Rights is one of the leading human rights, civil rights organizations in the country, and it happens to be based here in Atlanta, and they hold their events here. They held an event here 3 days ago on the challenge of decriminalizing race and poverty. The notion that somebody can get pulled over for a traffic violation, can't pay the fine, and is in jail is put on probation and has to pay $40 a month to the probation officer. Winds up in unconscionable debt for a taillight. Southern Center for Human Rights does that here. How engaged with the community? It's not a litmus test. Does the school talk about pipeline programs and reach into the high schools and the junior high schools to start early? Or does the school have one? We partner with the Gate City Bar in King and Spalding. We have the Justice Benham Law Camp in the summer, where disadvantaged students from local high schools and junior high schools come in here and get a taste. Many other schools do. It's not the unique province of Georgia State. But do they engage in the community? How do they engage in the community? What does it say about their values. Let me mention something else, and it doesn't fit that well into what I'm saying, but it's so unique that I want you to know about it. I mentioned earlier jobs are down, but their jobs are not what they were, but they're rising, and you should be able to find a job because there are fewer graduates. Let's not be misunderstood. The difficulty of finding a job from law students today shouldn't obscure the fact that in underprivileged communities and in rural areas of this state, there is enormous need for representation, and it's not being met. There's an enormous amount of unmet need for lawyers. The question is where you look, where you want to live, and how you want to cut your teeth. There are things that legal education must begin to do to train people how to engage in small and solo firm practice, create a VISTA. Are you guys too young for VISTA? An AmeriCorps, a Teach for America kind of program to get young lawyers in the early parts of their career, maybe as a way to provide loan, to connect it to loan forgiveness, to get them out to these communities. One thing all of the law schools in this state have begun to do, and it's rare to see 5 law schools cooperate in this way and partner with the state bar. Has anybody ever heard what an incubator is in legal education? You're cheating. When students graduate and they're not really ready to put out their shingle, maybe about 30, 40 law schools in the country will enroll as graduates 8 to 10 students for 1 year to 18 months and school them on the basics of small and solo firm practice, how to develop a client base, how to deal with the business of a law firm, and get their practice started. And then 12 months to a year to 18 months, they fly, they leave the incubator. We wanted to do that at Georgia State. And we talked about it and said, this is a great idea, but how do you scale it up? We're going to benefit 8 students every 18 months? It doesn't seem to have any impact. So we got together with all the law schools in the state and said, why don't we join together and make a law school-wide incubator program in the state of Georgia, go to the bar for support, which they wouldn't do if we each went by ourselves because they'd have to choose among us. And there is the access, it's the program for access to justice, where right now there's 12 students, 12 graduates in there. It's 2 blocks from here. The goal is to scale up to 30 or 40, because you can scale up with all those, with all of the law schools. They get the benefits that I've described. They are required while they're there to do pro bono and low bono work, and they leave in 18 months in the way I described. That's an example of at least making an effort to walk the walk and not just talk the talk about the need for representation to be able to go out to areas where it's not going. And I've saved, in terms of law school quality, the most important for last. And it's hard as consumers to check out what I'm going to tell you. But it's important. Not all faculties were created equal. You want faculty members who are scholars in their own right, but what I'm emphasizing is you want faculty who connect what they do to the real world. You want Tanya Washington, who was the lead author in the amicus brief in the Okerfeld case, and influenced the outcome in that decision because the arguments were referenced by the court. Did I get the right case?
Same-sex marriage, just in case you haven't heard the name of the case.
It's the case where the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of same-sex marriage. Tanya Washington's research is in same-sex marriage and its relationship to the needs of children. Everybody know what an amicus brief is? You're not a party to the court. You're an outsider who has a recognized interest in the litigation. You're a friend of the court. And if you're highly thought of enough, it will get read. Here it got referenced. Real world, not just ivory tower. We have Tim Litton. If there's any unfortunate press coverage about the need to rein in the gun industry, and certainly there is, both press coverage and need, the go-to person from the media is Tim Litton on our faculty for the research he does about regulation of dangerous products and dangerous and industries of the kind. We have Naresh Sakhon, who has written leading pieces in the last year about police violence. These are people who are performing their job with an awareness of the real world. These are people whom you can work for as graduate research assistants and have relationships with and learn from. Those are just some of the things beyond the obvious. I've not mentioned rankings because I'll have to curse. And I'm not going to curse. I've only mentioned things that I think are not as obvious but are really important, because all 200 law schools will give you a fine legal education. But there are differences, and these are what I think you should look for. I hope you have a great, great conference. For those of you who are taking the LSAT tomorrow, I hope you have great, great karma, and I wish you the best of luck.